Shio, Hiano, Ik Huoduhi. Hello, this is a beautiful day. I'm back again trying to explain a little bit of the intro of what we're doing with these Cherokee language videos in order to help us to maybe persist and learn a great deal about the language and to share with each other. And it is a beautiful day today. We're having some gorgeous weather and I'm out here. I wanted to start before I get going too far and thank some people. I need to post a list of your names in the comments. There have been many people who have gone on Patreon in the past year. Shki, thank you. Shki, thank you for helping me with your donations through Patreon, through other giving methods that have helped me in this past year to do a lot more recording, organizing, storing, collating, preparing, whatever you want to call. I've been doing all those things and you made it possible. Shki, doyu kanyalieli chehi. I thank you so very much. But I just wanted to say that before I get too far into this. Hawa. Okay, Hawa. One of the things that a lot of people have asked is why? Why, every time they try to learn Cherokee, why do they keep, especially speakers, why do they throw the syllabary at them? And they unfortunately have come away with these wild theories about why Cherokee speakers are always giving the syllabary, sharing it with people. And it's not what most people think. And I want to hopefully clear some of that up. We have many misconceptions about Cherokee because we are English speakers. We don't speak English properly in America. We have our own American speak, but we still have our ideas of what Cherokee's going to do and behave, and it just isn't that kind of an animal. It's a whole other creature. The syllabary is important because in Cherokee, morphemes are what the language is based out of. And I'm not sure how far we want to go with this. I have done entire classes where we just studied morphemes. I've taken classes from Cherokee speakers, fluent speakers, who explained morphemes to me. One of the early classes I had with Edohi taught me a lot about morphemes. And I'm not sure how far I want to go into that. It's not that it's advanced, but there's a lot to it. So let me start with this. Whatever you believe about the Cherokee language, I think it is a beautiful written language. And here's an example I brought outside with me. Oops, that was upside down. Here's an example I brought with me that you might enjoy seeing. It's printed on burlap. It's one of the things that hangs on my wall. I think it's beautiful. It's artistic. But it's not just meant to be art. It actually is meant to be used. Sequoia is credited with sharing Cherokee with the world. And old speakers, fluent speakers, people in the 70s and earlier that I spoke with, told me that he didn't invent the language. History books tell us he invented it, but he didn't invent the language. Whether you're going to believe that or subscribe to that, whether you think it's true or not, I'm not here to convince you one way or the other of that. I know it's a very political belief statement. Some people are offended that he's not given the credit for what he did, or they feel like that takes away from what he did. Others are unable to comprehend or believe or accept that Cherokee might be an ancient written language. We do know that the first language that written style that Sequoia shared contained a lot more symbols than the one that we use today. We also know that it was very different. And I pulled out one of my books that shows this. This is a example in Sequoia's own handwriting of what he wrote and how the syllabary would have looked. And if you've never seen this, it's It might be shocking to you, but I think it is actually beautiful. There's a movement afoot for the last 2 decades to try to maybe bring this back, but it never gains hold or traction. Some people call this handwritten syllabary, and just like the difference between when you write in cursive and the difference when you use block letters that are printed. Where did we get the syllabary that we are more familiar with? Let me show you that in one of my books. And I'm not saying you need to get all these books. I know books are on the list of things that are not essential, non-essential items, so you may not be able to get them, and they're expensive, so I'm just going to share these. Here's another syllabary chart. What was this became this, and there's people who believe Sequoia did it. There's people who believe that some of the early printing press, because this was not available, but these were available, they just assigned these to these and gave them meaning and reorganized the chart. It's possible. It's a plausible belief, but this, whatever, regardless, this is how it was written, and this is what we have. Now, I have done many things over the years to try to learn the letters, and you may want to come up with some of your own ways, and I will share some of these in time. But I want you to think of these in a different way than you may have been thinking. Why do they always throw the Cherokee at you with the syllabary? Well, because this is a complete meaning. You think of it as a letter. It's actually got its own complete meaning. And every single syllabary shape has its own complete, standalone, never changing meaning. Let you think about that for a minute. Each one has its own standalone, never changing meaning. So when you see that particular, let's call it a letter, when you see that particular letter off by itself with nothing else with it, it has its own meaning. Something interesting happens when it falls into what we call a word. A Cherokee word is really not a word, it's a sentence. Each word has its own subject, its own meaning of movement, and its own object. It also, each one indicates a place in time, past, present, or future. Each Cherokee, what you think of as a word, is actually, in English, an entire sentence. When you grasp a hold of that idea, that concept, then you begin to understand why all the fluent speakers want to start with helping you learn the syllabary. Because once you've learned the syllabary, you now have a treasure trove of words that now you're going to learn what they mean. When you have 2 syllables written in syllabary and you put them next to each other, depending on what order you put them in, that's going to make a new word meaning. So a syllable that's in the beginning of a word will have a particular meaning if it's always in the beginning. But if it's at the end of the word, it changes and has a different meaning. So placement is important in that word. When you combine syllables next to each other, they also affect each other and change meaning. It's kind of like when you combine, it's not like this exactly, but this helped me years ago to understand it. If you've ever studied chemistry, you know water is made out of H2O, hydrogen, and oxygen. Hydrogen is not water. Water is a whole other thing. Oxygen is not water. It's a whole other thing. But if you put hydrogen and oxygen together with H2O, now you have water. It changes it. And Cherokee syllables act like those molecules. They're molecules that exist as themselves, like hydrogen or oxygen. But when you combine them, you get something completely new. Water. I know we could spend our lifetime studying what each one means, and when you add another to it, what that means. And we may do some of that. And I've done months of study with people like that who are really into this. But I don't think that's appropriate for an intro course. So, but I just want you to be aware of the concept and to know that each syllable is important. You need to learn them. And not just because it helps you to write them or read them, but also because they have their own standalone distinct meaning and they work together to form other meanings. And you need to know that. It's important. Shki. Thank you. Shki.